When you think about a massive multi-billion-dollar enterprise, there is this ingrained expectation of precision. Like you just assume it operates like a finely tuned machine.
Right, that's the dream.
Yeah, you picture this seamless automated flow. A customer clicks a button, a gear turns in a data center somewhere, a robotic arm moves in a warehouse, and the business just executes. It's supposed to be this perfectly engineered, frictionless environment.
Which is, that is definitely the marketing brochure version of enterprise IT for sure. The reality is usually a little different.
Exactly, because then you actually look under the hood, you get hired, you step into the real world of their operations, and that illusion just shatters instantly.
Oh, yeah, it shatters hard.
Instead of a synchronized machine, you find yourself looking at a company running on thousands of completely undocumented, organically grown, heavily duct-taped business processes.
Yeah.
I mean, you have critical financial data being passed around in like Excel spreadsheets via unencrypted emails.
That happens way more often than people think.
It really does. And you have manual approvals getting lost because someone sent a Slack message instead of using the actual procurement portal. And my absolute favorite, you have these ancient, mission-critical back-end systems that only one person, usually named Bob, who sits in the basement and retires in 3 months, knows how to update.
Yes. The Bobbin accounting dependency. It is a recognized architectural flaw in almost every Fortune 500 company. It is the absolute definition of operational muddy waters.
Definitely.
And the terrifying part is that the larger the company gets, the more prevalent these invisible, undocumented workarounds become. People just figure out how to get their specific job done, regardless of whether it scales or makes sense for the broader organization.
Which is exactly why we are diving into this specific material today. We are looking at SAP Build Process Automation. But we are not doing a fluffy, high-level overview of what automation is.
No, we don't need to do that here.
Right. The sources we're pulling from today form a highly structured, hands-on, deeply technical learning guide. The mission for this deep dive is to bypass the generic talk entirely. We are going to drill directly into the core architectural concepts, the specific configuration paths, and the exact mechanics of how you untangle a messy enterprise and turn it into that flawless automated machine.
I love that mission because, frankly, it is a critical topic right now. The stakes are incredibly high. As companies transition to modern architectures, they're realizing that just buying new software doesn't fix a broken process.
Yeah, a shiny new app doesn't solve a bad foundation.
Exactly. If you have a terrible, inefficient way of onboarding an employee and you just put a shiny new software interface on top of it, all you have done is digitize a bottleneck. You haven't fixed anything. You have to fundamentally restructure how the work actually gets done.
So let's visualize this. Think about those standard everyday business processes, the chaotic, undocumented ones we just mentioned. Imagine a city that has evolved over 50 years with absolutely zero zoning laws.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Right. So you have skyscrapers built right next to chemical factories. You have massive 6-lane highways that suddenly dead end into a dirt road. And the traffic jams are legendary because everyone is trying to take a shortcut through a residential neighborhood just to get to the grocery store.
Yeah, and in an enterprise, those dirt roads are the manual spreadsheet uploads.
Exactly. And the traffic jam is your quarter-end financial close.
Right. And if we carry that analogy forward, the goal of something like SAP Build Process Automation isn't just to buy faster cars for the people stuck in that traffic jam. The goal is to, bulldoze the dirt roads and lay down a perfectly engineered grid system.
Okay, I see where you're going.
You map the utilities, you synchronize the traffic lights, you designate commercial and residential zones. Because when you build on an engineered grid, you can scale the city outwards infinitely without breaking the core infrastructure.
So you can add 1,000 new residents or 1,000 new employees or 10,000 new daily transactions, and the system handles the load effortlessly. But the chaotic city might still technically get the job done, right? A package might eventually get delivered to that skyscraper. A vendor might eventually get their invoice paid, even if it took 45 days and 12 manual emails to get there.
Well, yeah, they do get the job done, and that is precisely what makes them so dangerous.
Wait, really? Dangerous how?
Because they, quote-unquote, work on a rudimentary level, they mask severe operational friction. They leak time, they hide massive bottlenecks, and they completely prevent scaling. If your manual vendor payment process works for 100 vendors, what happens when you acquire a new company and suddenly have 5,000 vendors?
The whole system just collapses.
The system collapses. This is why we have to frame the technology we are discussing today correctly. It isn't just a piece of software you install to make IT's life easier. It is a fundamental engine for enforcing operational excellence across the entire business logic layer.
Okay, so if we want to build this engineered grid, we can't just start pouring concrete blindly. Before we even touch a single SAP configuration screen or look at a user interface, we have to define the blueprint. We have to understand what it is we're actually trying to build.
Right, you need a plan.
And in the source material, that blueprint is governed by something called Business Process Management, or BPM.
Because you cannot automate a mess. Or, well, rather you can, but then you just have a faster, more highly automated mess that makes mistakes at the speed of light.
Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that. BPM is the overarching methodology that organizations use to identify, analyze, measure, and improve their processes before they even think about the automation phase. It is the discipline of mapping reality.
And the documentation provides a very specific framework for this, the 6-stage BPM lifecycle. And I want to spend some real time unpacking these stages because they form a continuous loop, not just a one-off checklist.
Yeah, that continuous loop aspect is vital.
So stage 1 is design. This is where you identify your existing processes and design new versions. But mechanically, what does that actually look like in a modern enterprise? Are we talking about like business analysts sitting in a room with a whiteboard?
Actually, yes. Often it's exactly that. In the design phase, you aren't writing a single line of code. You are literally interrogating the business. Let's take a sales order management process, a very common core use case in the SAP ecosystem.
Okay, classic example.
Designing it means sitting down with the sales team, the finance team, and the logistics team, and just asking, how do we actually manage sales orders today, right now, in reality?
So not how the manual says we do it.
Right, not the manual. How do you actually do it? And you map every single manual step, every email, every workaround. Then, and only then, you design the ideal state.
Okay, and once you have that theoretical ideal state mapped out on your whiteboard, you move to stage 2, which is model. The material says this is where you look at how the process should behave under different scenarios. So is this basically just stress testing the logic?
Exactly. You are trying to break the design before you build it. You ask the what-if questions.
Like edge cases.
Yeah. What happens if the sales order is for $1 million instead of 1,000? Does it need a different level of executive approval? What if the customer requests a highly customized product that isn't in the standard catalog?
Right. What if the customer's credit check fails in the middle of the process?
Yes. You are modeling the different logical gateways and ensuring your design has a path for every single exception. Because if you don't model the exceptions, your automation will simply crash the first time it encounters something unexpected.
That makes total sense. So you've designed reality, you've modeled the exceptions, and then you hit stage 3, implement. This is carrying out the process and aligning it with your supporting applications. This is where IT finally gets the blueprint and starts connecting the software systems, right?
Yes. This is where the abstract logic becomes digital reality. You are hooking into your HR systems, your finance modules, setting up the digital forms, and, configuring the routing rules.
Okay, and this is where I think things get really fascinating. Because those first 3 stages, design, model, implement, that feels like a standard IT project. You plan it, you build it, you launch it. But BPM is a 6-stage loop. The second half of the loop starts with stage 4 monitor. You track the improvements and see how they perform in the wild.
Because the second a process goes live, it encounters the ultimate chaotic, variable human behavior.
Oh, humans ruin everything.
We really do. Monitor is about gathering data. How long is it actually taking for that $1 million sales order to get approved? Are we seeing a bottleneck at the VP level?
Which leads directly into stage 5, optimize. You take that data you monitored and you modify and improve the process based on the feedback. Maybe you realize the VP doesn't need to approve orders under 2 million, so you adjust the rule to remove the bottleneck.
Exactly. And finally, stage 6 is re-engineering. This is the realization that the business environment is never static.
Supply chains shift, laws change.
Right, globally. Compliance and tax laws change, underlying software APIs update. Re-engineering is where you fundamentally change or simplify the entire process to fit entirely new business needs. And then you are right back to stage 1, designing the new reality.
Let me play devil's advocate here for a
Mhm.
second. This six-stage life cycle design, model, implement, monitor, optimize, re-engineering, it sounds incredibly elegant in a textbook. It's a perfect circle.
Mm.
But in the real world, enterprise teams are stretched incredibly thin. Where do companies usually drop the ball? Is it the optimize phase that gets ignored?
Oh, absolutely.
Because I imagine once a process is, working and people are getting paid, the project team gets reassigned to the next fire.
You hit the nail on the head. Companies are usually fantastic at stages 1 through 3. They design, model, and implement because the pain of not having the system is acute. The executives are screaming for a new sales portal, so the team builds it.
Yeah, there's urgency.
But the second it goes live, the second that first sales order goes through successfully, the project is marked complete and everyone moves on. Stages 4, 5, and 6 require extreme operational discipline.
Because without it, the process slowly decays.
Exactly. The business changes, but the automated process doesn't. And suddenly, 5 years later, people are complaining that the system is slow and restrictive, and they start building new, undocumented Excel workarounds to bypass the automation that was supposed to save them in the first place.
Wow, so you end up right back where you started.
Pretty much. This is why the BPM methodology relies on specific underlying technological elements to force that loop to continue. The documentation highlights 8 core elements: communication, process mapping, analytics, the process engine itself, form creation, system integration, rule-based workflows, and approval mechanisms.
I don't want to just list those. Let's connect the dots. How do those elements actually keep the loop alive?
Okay, take analytics and the process engine. If you don't have deep, automated analytics built directly into the engine running the process, then the monitor phase is manual.
Which means someone has to run a report.
Right. I mean, someone has to manually pull reports, compile them, and look for bottlenecks. And nobody has time for that. But if the process engine is automatically generating a dashboard that flashes red when an approval takes longer than 48 hours, the monitor phase happens by default. The technology forces the visibility, which then triggers the optimize phase.
So if you're listening right now and thinking about your own organization's tech stack, try this exercise later today. Take just one process that you are responsible for or interact with regularly. It could be onboarding a new contractor, submitting a complex expense report, anything. Mentally map it against these 6 stages. You can probably definitively point to how it was designed and implemented.
Almost certainly.
But can you identify the exact mechanism your company uses to monitor and optimize it? Is there a dashboard? Is there a feedback loop? If you can't point to a mechanism, you are looking at a process that is currently decaying. And that makes it a prime candidate project for the technology we're about to discuss.
That is a phenomenal reality check. Because identifying the gap in the life cycle is the first hurdle, but the second hurdle is realizing that a perfectly mapped, perfectly coded BPM lifecycle is completely useless without the human architecture supporting it. The software doesn't run in a vacuum, it interacts with people, and people are messy.
Which perfectly transitions us into the human element of this architecture. We're moving from the abstract system loop to the specific human operators who interact with it. The SAP course material is very rigid about defining these roles, and I suspect it's precisely to control that human messiness.
Oh, it absolutely is.
They break the human architecture down into 6 distinct roles. Let's walk through a hypothetical scenario to ground this. Let's say we have a company, we'll call them Acme Corp, and they are rolling out a new automated workflow for ordering employee laptops.
A classic, deceptively complex enterprise process.
Right. Everyone thinks it's simple until they have to map it. So role number 1 is the process owner. Who is this at Acme Corp?
Well, the process owner is your overarching business authority. They aren't the ones clicking the buttons or approving the laptops day to day. This might be, say, the VP of IT operations.
Okay, so they own the big picture.
Exactly. They're the person who looks at the monitor phase analytics and says, our laptop procurement process is taking 3 weeks, and our new hires are sitting idle. We need to adjust the workflow. They own the final business outcome and are accountable for its efficiency.
Okay, role number 2 is the process initiator. This is the person who actually starts the workflow. In our scenario, this is the hiring manager who needs a laptop for their new employee. But the text notes a really interesting technical distinction here. An initiator can start a process knowingly or unknowingly.
Right, and the unknowing initiator is a massive part of modern architectural design. A knowing initiator is obvious. The manager logs into a portal, fills out a digital form that says, I need a MacBook Pro, and clicks Submit. They actively started the process.
And the unknowing initiator.
An unknowing initiator might just be an HR representative changing a status field in the core HR system, like SAP SuccessFactors. They change a candidate's status from interviewing to hired. They're just doing their normal HR data entry.
But that triggers something else entirely.
Exactly. That simple status change in the back end generates an event trigger, which the automation engine catches, and it automatically launches the entire laptop procurement workflow without anyone ever clicking a Start Process button. The HR rep initiated the process unknowingly.
That is powerful, but I can see how that gets complicated if the governance isn't clear. Which brings us to role number 3, the decision maker. This is your gatekeeper. They hold the power of approval or rejection, which routes the process flow down different logical paths.
Right, they control the flow.
At Acme Corp, if a manager requests a standard $1,000 PC, maybe it auto-approves. But if they request a $4,000 high-end engineering laptop, the decision maker might be the director of finance.
Precisely. The decision maker enforces the business rules, and then, once a decision is made, it flows to the process participants. These are the actual doers. They execute the specific tasks within the workflow.
The boots on the ground.
Yes. In our scenario, this is the IT technician who receives the approved order, physically takes the laptop out of the box, installs the corporate security software, and ships it to the employee. They are participating in the execution of the process.
And finally, we have the analytical roles, which are split into 2. The process instance reviewer and the process metrics reviewer. I want to make sure I understand the difference here because they sound very similar.
It's the difference between micro and macro visibility. The instance reviewer is looking at one specific single run of a process.
Okay, give me an example.
Let's say a hiring manager is furious because their new hire starts tomorrow and they don't have a laptop. The instance reviewer goes into the system, pulls up that one specific transaction and says, I see the problem. It was approved by finance on Tuesday, but it's currently sitting in the IT technician's queue waiting to be imaged. They are troubleshooting a single instance.
Okay, so the instance reviewer is putting out a specific fire.
Exactly. The metrics reviewer, on the other hand, doesn't care about one specific laptop. They are looking at the macro data across thousands of instances. They're looking at the dashboard and saying, why are all high-end engineering laptop orders taking an average of 14 days this quarter when our SLA is 5 days? They are looking for systemic bottlenecks to feed back into the optimize phase we talked about earlier.
So if I step back and look at these 6 roles, owner, initiator, decision maker, participant, instance reviewer, metrics reviewer, why does SAP insist on defining these so rigidly in the documentation? Is it just for, like, access control and security permissions in the software?
I mean, it definitely maps to software permissions, but the real reason is much deeper. It's organizational psychology. Defining these roles categorizes them into primary, secondary, and stakeholder groups, and this structure prevents what psychologists call the diffusion of responsibility.
Right, when everyone is responsible, no one is responsible.
Exactly. Think back to that chaotic, unzoned city analogy. When a manual, duct-taped process stalls out, everyone points fingers. IT blames HR because the ticket wasn't filled out right. HR blames procurement for being slow. Procurement blames the software for crashing. It's just noise.
So frustrating.
But when you have a defined process owner, a clear decision maker, and defined participants, the bottleneck becomes instantly, undeniably visible. If the workflow is stuck at the finance director's approval node for 6 days, you aren't blaming the system. You know exactly which human role needs intervention or support.
That is a critical takeaway. If you are preparing to automate a process in your own department, try building a simple matrix on a piece of paper. Write down these 6 roles and force yourself to assign an actual human name or a specific department to every single one for your target process.
I highly recommend doing that.
If you find a process where you cannot definitively name the decision maker, or you realize absolutely no one is acting as the metrics reviewer, stop right there. Do not open the SAP software. You have to fix your human governance first, because automating a process with a missing decision maker doesn't solve anything. It just means you're automating a traffic jam.
The software will only execute the rules it is given. If the governance is broken, you just achieve a broken outcome faster. But assuming you have mapped your lifecycle and defined your human architecture, you are finally ready to touch the technology.
Let's make that transition. We have the business logic, we have the human roles defined. Now, how does a developer or an IT architect actually step into SAP Build Process Automation? What is the actual software ecosystem we are dealing with here?
To understand how to step into it, you have to understand its history and what it actually is under the hood. SAP Build Process Automation is not a brand new isolated piece of software that was built from scratch a year ago. It is a merged architecture.
A merged architecture, meaning it's a combination of older tools.
Exactly. It is the evolution and the joining of two former, highly successful, heavily utilized standalone products, SAP Workflow Management and SAP Intelligent Robotic Process Automation, which everyone refers to as SAP IRPA.
Okay, let's pause and unpack that terminology for anyone who might not be deep in the weeds of SAP's product catalog. What did those two separate products actually do, and why did SAP merge them?
Okay, think about the two fundamental ways you can automate a task in an enterprise. First, you have complex processes that require human interaction and logic. You need digital forms, you need complex approval routing based on business rules, and you need to orchestrate API calls between modern systems. If you wanted to do that, you used SAP Workflow Management. It was the orchestration engine.
Right, routing tasks to humans and modern systems. I get that.
But then you have a completely different type of automation problem. The reality of enterprise IT is that not every system is modern. You have legacy systems, maybe an ancient mainframe or a third-party payroll portal that simply do not have APIs. You can't just send them a clean data packet.
Oh, right.
To get data in or out of those systems, a human being literally has to open a web browser, log in, read the screen, type in data, and click submit.
And that is where robotic process automation, or RPA, comes in.
Exactly. If a system doesn't have an API, you build a bot. SAP IRPA allowed you to build intelligent software bots that would mimic human keystrokes and mouse clicks. They would open the browser, scrape the data off the screen, and execute the tasks.
So why merge workflow and IRPA? Weren't they fine on their own doing their separate jobs?
They were fine, but modern business processes are increasingly hybrid. You almost never have a process that is purely just API workflows or purely just bot scraping. You usually need both in the same flow.
Give me an example of that.
Okay. You might need a human to fill out a modern digital form, which routes through a workflow for approval, but then the final step requires taking that approved data and having a bot type it into a 20-year-old legacy system. Previously, developers had to jump between two completely different platforms with different skill sets to string that together.
That sounds like a headache.
It was. By merging them into SAP Build Process Automation, SAP created a unified environment. You can now orchestrate human approvals, API calls, and robotic screen scraping from a single interface.
And this merger heavily leans into what the industry calls the citizen developer experience, right?
Yes, very heavily. A citizen developer is a business user, someone in HR or finance or procurement who deeply understands the business logic and the rules, but they don't know how to write Java or Python code. By bringing workflow and RPA into a low-code drag-and-drop environment, SAP is empowering the people who actually own the process to build the automation.
Think of this merged platform like moving into a newly built, state-of-the-art smart home. That new house is SAP Build Process Automation. But you don't have to throw away all the expensive appliances you bought for your old house. You can bring your old reliable appliances, your legacy workflows, and your existing IRPA bots and plug them right into this new automated grid.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
They will work perfectly, but now they're part of a smarter, more connected ecosystem.
That analogy perfectly illustrates the migration paths. Because this is a merged architecture, not every developer is starting from a blank slate. The SAP curriculum outlines 3 specific starting points, or migration paths, for developers entering this new environment. And your starting point dictates exactly how you will configure your projects.
Let's break down these 3 paths mechanically. Path 1. You are an organization coming from SAP Workflow Management. You already have complex, mission-critical workflows built and running. What is the reality of moving to SAP Build Process Automation? Do you have to rewrite everything?
No, and that is the primary technical benefit here. There is virtually no migration effort required because SAP Build Process Automation utilizes the exact same underlying workflow runtime. Your existing artifacts, your complex workflow components, your process steps, your deeply coded business rules, they become instantly reusable in the new environment.
So you don't lose your investment.
Right. You can run your legacy processes side by side with brand new content.
But what if I have a team of pro-code developers who like writing code and building complex stuff? Do they have to use the simplified citizen developer interface now?
Not at all. If you are a traditional pro-code developer, you can continue using the advanced, highly complex workflow editor in SAP Business Application Studio, which is SAP's professional development environment. You can keep building complex logic there, but now you can expose those complex workflows to the business users in the new build environment. It's the best of both worlds.
Okay, path 2. You are coming from the SAP IRPA side. You have a fleet of bots running around scraping screens and doing data entry.
Again, you are running on the same execution runtime, so those existing automation bots seamlessly become reusable components in your new SAP Build lobby. But here is the critical architectural upgrade for Path 2. Previously, a bot was just an isolated bot. You scheduled it and it ran. Now, you can wrap that bot in citizen developer artifacts.
Wait, what does that mean practically? Wrap it in an artifact.
It means you can easily add a front-end digital form to trigger the bot, instead of just running it on a timer. You can add complex business decision rules that tell the bot when and under what conditions it should run. And crucially, you get deep process visibility analytics that track the bot's success rate within the larger context of the business process.
Oh, so the bot becomes a targeted tool within a larger workflow rather than just an isolated script.
Exactly. It's fully integrated.
And finally, Path 3. You are starting completely from scratch. You are a new SAP customer, or you are a department that has never automated anything before. You have no legacy workflows, no legacy bots.
This is where you fully leverage the new no-code process builder. You aren't migrating anything. You are building simple departmental forms, leveraging a massive library of pre-built business content, and letting your citizen developers design the automated flows from day one using a visual canvas.
If you are an IT architect or a process owner mapping out your strategy, you have to audit your current SAP environment today. Are you bringing legacy BPMN workflows from Business Application Studio? Are you bringing IRPA bots from the Cloud Studio? Or are you starting fresh? You have to know your origin point, because your answer dictates exactly which of the core tools in the platform you will spend your time in.
Which brings us to the actual interface. Once you log in, based on that starting point, you have to know how to navigate the core engine.
Yes, and this is where we get into the deepest technical segment of our dive. We're going to walk through the 5 distinct working modes available within the SAP Build lobby. This is the actual day-to-day reality of developing in this platform. Let's start with Mode 1, the built-in store. This is essentially your importing mode. Imagine you log into the SAP Build lobby. You see your dashboard. On the left-hand navigation pane, there is a button that says Store. You click it. What does this UI actually look like, and what are we looking at?
So the store interface is not just a simple list of downloads. It is a massive, highly curated repository of pre-packaged enterprise solutions. Think of it like an app store for enterprise processes. And because there's so much content, the UI is heavily focused on deep filtering.
Okay, filtering by what?
You can filter by projects, for example. If you know you have an issue with HR data, you might search for a specific project template titled Manage Employee Central Stalled Workflows.
Who is building these packages? Is it just SAP?
No, you can filter by publisher. It is heavily populated by SAP themselves, providing best practice templates for their own core systems like S/4HANA and SuccessFactors. But there is also a huge ecosystem of certified SAP partners who build industry-specific packages. You can filter by line of business like finance, procurement, or HR, and you can filter by industry like automotive, retail, or utilities.
So let's say I'm in HR. I filter by line of business, and I find an SAP published package for employee onboarding. What is actually inside that package? Am I just downloading like a PDF guide?
No, these are functional, executable software packages. When you hit import, you are downloading a complex mix of technical artifacts directly into your environment.
Like actual code?
Well, predefined structures. A single package might contain pre-built process templates that lay out the flow. It will contain digital forms with all the data fields already mapped. It might contain automation bots designed to interact with specific legacy software. It contains pre-configured process visibility dashboards, and it contains specific actions or skills, which are pre-configured API payloads designed to talk to remote systems.
The technical value of that seems immense. You're bypassing weeks, maybe months of development.
Exactly. Instead of sitting down with a blank canvas and trying to figure out how to build a sales order automation from scratch, you just download the template. It requires minimal configuration. Your primary task is just mapping the template's generic endpoints to your specific company's system URLs and adjusting the approval roles to fit that human governance matrix you built earlier. The heavy lifting of the technical architecture is already done.
Okay, but let's say the store doesn't have exactly what I need. Acme Core have a highly specific, totally unique process for approving, I don't know, customized laptop stickers. There's no template for that. That brings us to Mode 2, the Process Builder tool. This is building from scratch.
Right, the blank canvas.
Let's paint a picture of this UI for you. You are in the design console. It is a visual, no-code canvas. It's clean, plenty of white space. At the very top of the canvas, there is a prominent block that says Trigger. How do you want to start your process?
Because every automation, no matter how complex, must have a triggering event. In the Process Builder, when you click Add a Trigger, a configuration menu slides out from the right side of the screen titled Choose What Happens Next. This menu is essentially the palette of your citizen developer canvas.
Let's detail the exact node options available in that menu, because understanding these nodes is fundamental to mastering the platform. You have several choices. You can select Form, Approval, Action, Automation, Controls and Events, Subprocess, Email, or Decision.
Let's analyze the mechanics of a few of these keynotes to understand how they generate complex outputs without you ever writing a line of code.
Let's start with the Form node.
Okay, if you select the form node, you drag it onto the canvas. When you click on it, a drag and drop form editor opens. You can drag text boxes, drop-down menus, date selectors onto the screen to build a user interface. Let's say you build that laptop request form. Mechanically, what's happening is that the system is taking every field on that form and turning it into a data variable that can now be passed down the process line to other nodes.
So the output of the form becomes the input for the next step.
Precisely. Now let's look at the decision node. If you drag a decision node onto the canvas, you're configuring business rules. The UI presents you with a visual logic builder.
Like an if-then statement.
Exactly. You might configure a rule that looks at the data variable from the form, say, laptop cost, and you set a parameter. If laptop cost is greater than $2,000, route this process to the IT director. If laptop cost is less than $2,000, auto-approve. You are defining complex logical gateways visually, and the platform translates that into the underlying execution code.
Wait, I want to zero in on two specific nodes that I think could cause a lot of confusion for a new developer. The action node versus the automation node. If I just look at those words, they sound like they do the exact same thing. They both make a system do something. Why do I need both? Is an action just a simpler automation?
That is a critical distinction to make, and it goes back to our earlier discussion about APIs versus legacy systems. They accomplish the same goal updating a system, but their mechanical approach is completely different. An action node is specifically used to encapsulate and call the APIs of modern remote systems.
So an action is just a clean digital data exchange.
Yes. If you need to instantly post a new employee record into S/4HANA, and S/4HANA has a beautiful, clean API, you use an action node. You configure the JSON payload, and the system sends the data directly from server to server in milliseconds. It is fast, reliable, and totally invisible to the user.
In the automation node.
You use the automation node when a system doesn't have an easily accessible API. This is your RPA bot. If you need to update that ancient 20-year-old payroll system that only has a desktop interface, an API call will fail. So you drag the automation node onto the canvas. When the process hits that node, it triggers a software bot that literally opens the payroll application on a virtual machine, reads the screen, types the employee's name into the field, and clicks Save, exactly like a human would.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Action equals API. Automation equals RPA bot. And the beauty of the process builder is that you can snap these different technological approaches together on the same canvas, like Lego bricks, depending on what the underlying system requires.
Exactly. Which brings us smoothly to Mode 3 Reuse SAP Workflow Management. We touched on this during the migration paths, but let's dive into the technical reality. If I have an existing workflow built by a pro developer, how does it look different from the simple process builder we just described?
I imagine it's much more complicated visually.
It is a massive contrast in visual style and complexity. The process builder we just talked about uses a very clean, top-to-bottom vertical block flow design. It is meant to be intuitive for a citizen developer, but traditional SAP workflow management uses a global standard called BPMN Business Process Model and Notation.
And BPMN looks a lot more like a complex engineering schematic, right?
Very much so. These maps are built in SAP Business Application Studio. They have highly specific notation symbols for rework loops, withdrawal events, timer boundaries, and parallel gateways. For example, a complex absence request flow built in BPMN might have a nested loop that sends the request back to the employee for rework if the manager declines it, with a timer that escalates it to HR if the employee doesn't respond in 48 hours, while simultaneously pinging a parallel system to check vacation balances. It gets incredibly complex.
So if I'm a citizen developer in the simple process builder, how do I interact with that massive BPMN schematic? I definitely don't want to mess it up.
In mode 3, you don't have to understand the BPM and semantic. You simply drag a sub-process node onto your clean canvas, and you point it at the legacy BPMN workflow. You pass it the necessary starting data, and your process effectively says, hey, Procode workflow, go to your complex thing and let me know when you are done. You deploy the complex logic directly into the new runtime, calling it as a single, simplified step within your larger citizen developer process.
That is incredibly elegant. And Mode 4 is essentially the same concept, but for your legacy bots, reuse SAP IRPA.
Yeah.
Let's walk through the actual UI flow for configuring this, because unlike the workflows, this spans across 2 different software interfaces. If I have a bot I want to reuse, I don't start in the SAP Build lobby, do I?
No, you have to package the bot first. You start by navigating to your existing SAP IRPA Cloud Studio, which is where the bot lives. You open your specific automation project. In the top right corner of the interface, you click the Share button, and then you select Generate Package.
Mechanically, what is happening when I click Generate Package?
The system is bundling your bot's executable scripts, its screen scraping logic, and all of its technical dependencies into a single encrypted exportable archive file.
Got it.
And
Then you switch over to your new environment, the SAP Build lobby. You click Import, you upload that generated package, and instantly that complex automation bot appears as an available artifact in your library. Now, when you are in the Process Builder canvas, you can just drag an automation node onto the screen and link it directly to that bot. You've successfully bridged the legacy RPA tech into the modern orchestration environment.
Which culminates in Mode 5 hybrid mode.
Yeah.
This is the mountaintop. This is the ultimate architecture where you are putting every single thing we just talked about. Forms, APIs, legacy workflows, and bots together into a single flow.
It really is where it all comes together.
Let's construct a theoretical hybrid process out loud so we can visualize the sheer power of this platform when it's fully utilized.
All right, let's build an end-to-end employee onboarding flow for Acme Corp. This is a notoriously fragmented process. We will start with Mode 2, the Process Builder. A hiring manager logs into a portal and fills out a digital form to trigger the process. The data from that form, name, department, salary, flows into a decision node. This node evaluates a business rule that determines the employee's specific role and the necessary IT equipment they need.
Okay, simple enough. But based on that decision, let's say it's an engineering hire. The process needs to do some heavy lifting. So it calls Mode 3. It triggers a highly complex legacy IT provisioning workflow that a pro developer built in Business Application Studio 5 years ago. This workflow handles setting up the Active Directory, configuring the VPN, and assigning security clearances based on a maze of BPMN logic.
Exactly. The citizen developer didn't have to build that IT logic, they just called it. Once that complex legacy workflow completes successfully, it passes the baton back to the main process. Now, the new employee needs to be set up in the payroll system, but Acme Core's payroll system is 20 years old and has no API. So the main process calls Mode 4. It triggers an imported IRPA bot that spins up, logs into that ancient non-API legacy payroll system, and manually creates the employee's tax profile by typing in the data it scraped from the original form.
And finally, to wrap it all up, the main process needs to update the modern core ERP system to make the hire official. It uses Mode 1. It executes a pre-built action that you downloaded directly from the built-in store. This action instantly fires the JSON payload at the S/4HANA Cloud API, registering the employee in the core database in milliseconds, and then the process fires off a welcome email.
Look at what you just built. Form to decision to legacy workflow to screen scraping bot to API action, all orchestrated in one single unified place managed by a business user.
It is brilliant, but I have to ask a serious architectural question here because it sounds almost too powerful. If I am a citizen developer, say a business analyst in HR, and I'm using hybrid mode, dragging and dropping these powerful nodes around a canvas, isn't there a massive risk that I might accidentally break something built by traditional IT?
That is a very valid fear.
Right. If I mess up the inputs to that legacy Active Directory workflow, couldn't I take down the network? How does SAP handle that friction between business users wanting to move fast and IT governments needing to protect the infrastructure?
That is the core tension of the citizen developer movement, and it is exactly why SAP designed the architecture the way they did. They handle that friction through a concept called strict separation of concerns and artifact encapsulation.
Encapsulation. Unpack that for me.
When IT builds a complex workflow in Business Application Studio or an advanced bot in the Cloud Studio, they don't just leave the code lying around. They publish it as a fixed, encapsulated component. Think of it like a locked black box. The outside of the box has slots where you can drop data in, and a slot where a result pops out.
Okay, I like that analogy. So the business user can't break the box.
The citizen developer using the process builder can place that black box on their canvas. They can route data into the slots, but they cannot open the box. They cannot see or change the underlying code, the BPMN logic, or the API endpoints inside the box. The process builder acts strictly as an orchestration layer, not a core modification layer.
So the business user controls the sequence of events when the box runs, but IT retains total lockdown control over the execution of the event.
Exactly. It empowers the business user to build the overarching logic of the process without terrifying the IT department that someone in HR is going to accidentally rewrite a core security protocol.
That is a deeply elegant solution to a very real enterprise problem. And it brings us to a challenge for you, the listener, if you want to test this out. If you have access to an SAP Build environment, log into the lobby. First, navigate to the store on the left menu. Filter by your specific line of business and download just one template. Don't even deploy it. Just open it up and look at the sheer volume of artifacts inside. Look at the forms, the variables, the predefined roles.
It really gives you a tremendous appreciation for the work SAP and its partners have put into standardizing these processes.
Then go back to the lobby, open the process builder, and create a brand new process from scratch. Build a simple two-node process. Click Add a Trigger, select Form, and build a simple input form with maybe 2 fields, name and request. Then connect it to an approval node. Finally, run it in the test console. Don't worry about connecting it to S/4HANA or a bot yet. Just experience the visual flow of passing data from a form to a human decision maker.
If you can execute that simple two-node process in the test console, you have fundamentally grasped the core mechanics of SAP Build Process Automation. Everything else we talked about, the complex legacy workflows, the RPA bots, the API actions, they are mechanically just more advanced nodes placed onto that exact same visual canvas.
We have covered a massive amount of technical ground today, moving from high-level theory to the actual configuration clicks. We started by defining the blueprint business process management. We mapped the 6-stage life cycle from design to re-engineering, proving that automation is a continuous living loop, not a static destination.
We then built the human architecture, emphasizing the absolute necessity of assigning real people to the 6 crucial roles, from process owner to metrics reviewer, to ensure accountability and prevent the diffusion of responsibility that plagues manual processes.
We traced the architectural evolution of the platform itself, detailing how SAP merged workflow management and IRPA to bridge the gap between modern API systems and legacy desktop applications. We identified the 3 migration paths based on your current tech stack, whether you are bringing BPMN workflows, Cloud Studio bots, or starting fresh.
And finally, we mastered the core engine, exploring the 5 working modes, importing from the store, building from scratch in the process builder, reusing workflows, reusing bots, and combining them all into the ultimate hybrid architecture.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a broader architectural question to mull over on your own. We talked extensively today about how SAP Build Process Automation empowers citizen developers. We talked about how this low-code drag-and-drop interface, with its encapsulated black boxes, effectively eliminates traditional syntax errors. A business user in HR isn't going to break the system by forgetting a semicolon in a line of code. The platform protects them from that.
It does. But in solving that technical problem, in making it so incredibly easy and safe to automate, we raise an entirely new, potentially more dangerous operational risk.
What's that?
By removing the technical friction of coding, do we risk institutionalizing bad business logic at lightning speed?
Oh, wow. Think about that. If you take a terrible, inefficient, duct-taped process from that chaotic, unzoned city we talked about at the beginning of the show, and you automate it flawlessly using the process builder, all you've really done is ensure that the wrong thing happens much, much faster.
Exactly. And worse, because it's automated, it happens without human intervention to catch the absurdity of it. If anyone can automate a process by dragging and dropping boxes, the most valuable skill in your IT department is no longer knowing how to write code. The platform handles the code. The most valuable skill becomes process governance.
Right, it's about the logic, not the syntax.
It is the ability to look critically at the model and optimize stages of the BPM lifecycle and have the courage to ask, should we even be doing this step at all?
Are you ready for that shift in your organization? Are you prepared to govern the logic of the business now that the software handles the syntax of the execution? We have given you the technical tools today to pave the digital roads perfectly, but it is entirely up to you to decide where those roads actually lead. Good luck with your SAP Build configuration, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.